Hey folks, welcome back to the Rupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again, we will continue with the Professional Ethics by the Chartered Accountant Act 1949. Right? So far we have covered clause number 10, right? Clause number 1 to 10 of the part 1 of the first schedule of section 22. Okay with that? So today we'll start with a fresh new clause. The second last clause and the only last clause remaining in this part, right? So we'll start with the clause number 11 today. So whenever we start with the clause, the first thing that we check is the text of the clause. It is better if you remember the text as close as possible to the original rather than just memorizing the points, because when you write the answers you need to write the language of the text as well, right? And pardon my voice today because I think I'm a little choked, but I guess I'm audible, right? And it's understood. Okay, so we'll move ahead with it. So clause number 11, the text is in front of you. So a chartered accountant in practice is deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he engages in any business or occupation other than the profession of chartered accountant. You are a chartered accountant, your profession is chartered accountancy, so you cannot involve in any other business or occupation. That is the layman term of the first line. But again, there is a condition. What? That you can, or to say you cannot, unless you are permitted by the council so to engage. Right? So please don't confuse that if you are permitted means you have to apply for a specific permission every time. When we say if you are permitted by the council, which means that there are certain things that the council has already permitted, right? You are allowed to do, and the other things for which you would require specific permission. So all these things that are already permitted or for which you require specific permission, both of it can be done, right? They can be done, right? Then, provided that nothing contained herein shall disentitle a chartered accountant from being a director of a company unless he or any of his partner is interested in such company as a director, right? But he cannot be a managing director or a whole-time director. So are you clear with the text? Is it understood? We'll get into the details and everything after this, but first the clarity has to be gathered and the clarity has to be gained on the text. So in layman's term it says you cannot engage in any business or occupation other than the profession of chartered accountant unless permitted by the council so to engage, provided that nothing contained herein, that means nothing contained in clause 11, shall disentitle a chartered accountant from being a director of a company. Means that this clause will never obstruct you on the way of becoming a director in any company. But you cannot be a managing director or a whole-time director. You can be an executive director, non-executive director, right? So unless he or any of his partner is interested in such company as an auditor, you should not be the auditor of that company, neither should your partner be an auditor of the same company, right? For this you will also have a case study about the company and its holding company and stuff. We'll discuss about it later in the class. Okay, now we also need to understand why this restriction has been imposed, or why has this facility or this independence been taken away from us, right? So if you think rationally, right, then you understand that yes, these two things, a business or a profession parallel to your profession of a chartered accountant, is a difficult thing to do. Now why? Basically what happens, right, if you just analyze it, you are a chartered accountant, you have a firm where you provide a professional service, right? The professional service is of a service of a chartered accountant. It may be auditing them, preparing their accounts, filing their return, any kind of thing where you actually get access to some of the confidential data of your client, plus you get an access through your profession to a lot of businesses that are open in the market. Now if you are into any particular business along with your profession, right, if you combine any business with your profession, then you are not doing full justice to your profession. right? Because with your profession, you also have an intent of developing your business along with, and that will impact the dignity of the profession. And you can at any point of time take undue advantage, right? For example, if you are into a cement business, right? Maybe you're a dump holder or you are a wholesaler or anything. And what happens is that you also audit a client in the same industry, and that can be your competitor in the market. And you know all the trade secrets, you know all the clients, you know everything, where the things are coming from, where they're going, who are the customers, who are the vendors, all those things. That will give you a competitive advantage. So you're not supposed to do that, right? Or otherwise also, right? If you just think about it, then you can use your profession to secure businesses as well. You'll get connects with your client, right? Or even vice versa, you can use your business to get your clients. So in both ways, it impacts the dignity, it impacts the integrity, it impacts the independence of your profession, right? And understand that being a chartered accountant and being an auditor or something like that, like whatever service you provide, you are in a very important position. You play a very important role. So you just cannot misbehave with that role, right? You cannot take that role for granted. You cannot toss around with it, right? So when you have to separate all your interest out of it, you have to abide by the clauses provided in the professional ethics. Because if you are into a business that coincides or that relates to it, that would benefit out of it in any ways, then you would be biased in your profession. And that is what the institute actually tries to prevent. Clear with that? Now, for this, basically, the council has formulated 2 regulations, right? Because not all your profession or all your involvement in any other business or any other kind of activities would actually impact your profession, right? So now we should have a look at both the regulations. So first we have the regulation number 190A. So this is the text of the regulation on your screen, which says, chartered accountant in practice not to engage in any other business or occupation. Which means to say, a chartered accountant in practice is not supposed to engage in any other business or occupation other than the profession of accountancy, except with the permission granted in accordance with the resolution of the council. So that means the first thing it says is that whenever you want to go ahead with the profession of accountancy, you do not need any specific permission. You can always do that because you are also an accountant. So maybe you are an auditor, right? But that doesn't actually mean you cannot be an accountant for somebody else. So if you want to be an accountant, if you want to take up the profession of an accountant, you need not obtain any special permission from the council. That is the first thing said by the first regulation, which is 190A. In the plain text, nothing else, right? But now when we move on to the next regulation, which is 191, right? So let us read what does the text of 191 say. It says, part-time employment a chartered accountant in practice may accept, notwithstanding anything contained in regulation 190A, whatever is there, just let it be, but subject to the control of the council. A chartered accountant in practice may act as a liquidator, may act as a trustee, executor, administrator, arbitrator, receiver, advisor, or representative for costing, financial or taxation matters, or may take up an appointment that may be made by the central government or a state government or a court of law or any other legal authority, or may act as a secretary in his professional capacity, provided his employment is not on a salary cum full-time basis. So what this basically means to say is that, okay, as per regulation 190A, a chartered accountant can be involved in any accounting profession, right? But now it says, okay, let us forget about what 190A says, that okay, you cannot get into any business apart from accounting or whatever. Over here, one thing is clear that, okay, when you are a chartered accountant, there are various capacities into which you can act, right? You can be a liquidator, you can be a trustee, executor, financial tax consultant and stuff. So if you are into these things, they are basically a part of your profession. If you were not an auditor, you could be this. So they say that even if you are an auditor, you can be this, right? But under the control of the council. It says subject to the control of the council. And one more thing that it importantly highlights is that it should not be on a salary come full-time basis. Like if you're a liquidator, you're not on a salary come full-time basis liquidator, right? Don't involve with anybody on the representative of the costing, financial or tax matters on salary come full-time basis. That okay, throughout the year I'm employed with you on these matters. So whenever you have some issues, just let me go. I'll go as a tax representative for you. No, you cannot do that. Right? If any client needs any chartered accountant as a tax representative, let them come and hire you for that specific task. Right? Because you are an auditor. And again, this is like a new client coming up to you for any work. Right? You cannot just be associated to any company. You can take them up as clients, but you cannot be associated to them. You cannot be into full-time employment with them. Are you clear with that? So this is what we are actually gunning for. This is what the institute actually intends to describe. That once you are an auditor, you are an auditor. No more business and anything else should be clubbed unless and until it is either pre-approved or permission can be granted for it. Then take permission and then get involved. And for other things, you cannot involve, right? But these things like accounting as per 190A and other capacity of your as per 191 are always permissible. When I say permissible, why I use the word permissible instead of permitted is because it is subject to the control of the council. So at any point of time, if the council does not want you to be involved as a liquidator or something, you cannot. And whenever you're going in after informing the council so that whatever you do is tracked by the council. You are actually acting on behalf of the council now. Clear with it? So these are basically the two regulations that has been laid down by the clause number 11. And then moving on, we have the resolutions. Right? After regulation, we have the resolutions. We have separately two different resolutions. One which are the general resolution where the permissions are granted generally, and the other is a specific resolution for which you have to go ahead and take a specific permission if you want to discharge those duties. Right? So we'll discuss about those two resolutions in the next lecture. Until then, just remember what clause 11 means to say and what it actually intends. Right? Trying to secure the independence, integrity and the dignity of the profession. All it seeks is to keep up that image of a chartered accountant in the market. Because if you go ahead into any other business where you use your profession to maybe encash your business or use your business to expand your profession, both ways you're not legally right. Right? You're not ethically correct. So that is why this clause has come into play, so that there is a line drawn between what you can and what you cannot, what you should and what you should not. Right? Because otherwise, if any clear line of control is not drawn, then there's always a scope of getting involved in something which is not required and then ending up into a case study. Okay, something like this happened and now it's a case study, it's a judgment, and now we know what to do. So instead of waiting for all the judgments and case studies on specific cases, Institute has attempted to draw a guideline, a line of control between the two. What you should and what you should not, what you can't and what you cannot. Right? So with that thought in mind, we will conclude this lecture and take up the two resolutions in the next lecture. Right? So until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you and bye-bye. I'll see you guys back in the next lecture.